There has been loads of changes in the industry. You know, it used to be, you know, all about Pantone chips and, you know, getting typesetting back from typesetters, you know, craft. And we love the craft. We're not going to change that at all. But I think that the way that craft is expressed is changing, and that's exciting. I think when this business first started, it was a collection of very, very good graphic designers, and what they were doing is doing great ideas. And I think what's interesting is that culture of the idea is a thing that's stayed true right through the business and through the time as well. So the industry has changed, we've changed, but I think what's interesting is that what we believe in is all about the idea. And that hasn't changed. It's, you know, if you can do a great idea, it doesn't matter if it's graphic design, digital, print, you know, bit of branding idea. That's the thing that is the most important bit, and that hasn't changed.
As a creative director, the worst thing would be to be boring. That's the worst of all. That would be a crime.
Bizarrely though, even though I'm the woman, I think I'm probably the hardest on people out of the creative directors. I think my style is more, I think more lead from the front, sort of lead by example.
You never know what you're going to be working on next, and it's kind of frightening, and fear is a big motivational thing in itself, but you find out a lot about the world, and you find out a lot of things that you would never choose to learn about, and I think it's a dangerous thing to be too vocational and only learn what you want to learn.
You learn at art school self-sufficiency. You're not given projects to do, you have to think of things to do, and you have to rely on your resources, and you get interested in lots and lots of different stuff.
I had a choice of going to this printers who could teach me graphic design, so I did that, and what I ended up doing was couch stuffing. I learned how to stuff couches. I learned metalwork and how to build ramps for disabled people.
People end up doing graphic design and branding because they're either good at lots of things or really average at lots of things, so it's a marriage of lots of different interests. I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know that that's what graphic design was. So everything that I was doing, I was trying to solve with some kind of idea. And so even though if I was welding a ramp, you know, I'd be trying to redesign the ramp, you know, in a better way.
So this is a project we did for Deloitte in Davos, Switzerland. It was part of the World Economic Forum, which is essentially this massive event where literally the leaders of our planet come together, and they looked to sort of come up with new ideas that will essentially create a better world. Deloitte had the opportunity to brand an area within this space. It's quite interesting because with such a high impact audience and such a high profile event, the branding at these places is traditionally awful. It's incredibly corporate, incredibly unimaginative, and it really gave us an amazing opportunity to really push the work we do for Deloitte and really push the presence they had at the event, you know, to really investigate what we could do with branding in a brand environment to really create an amazing impact. We came up with an idea to use anamorphic illustration to brand the space. It basically used the function of the space, i.e. the walls, the floor, the ceiling, the fact that people were simply passing through it. It was really just a thoroughfare to create this massive standout graphic. So we had to try and work out if this anamorphic thing was going to work, and literally the only way we could do that was by constructing the crudest model you have ever seen. So this was it. This was the way we actually tested whether this thing was going to work. From day one, the Deloitte installation became the visual talking point of the event. It was quite amazing and featured on a number of international news sites. And what was great was that the message we put up, you know, really helped communicate the ethos of the Davos event and what it was about, you know, the idea of positive change and moving forward.
Because we have a lot of designers who have come through the design colleges, but they're taught differently and their experiences are very different from, the traditional training of years back.
I think when I'm looking for a new designer, I like seeing things that make me jealous. I like seeing things that make me laugh, and I like seeing a new and different idea. And so I think that's what I'm always looking to sort of bring into the team, and sort of that's what I think I've managed to get with people now. So I like seeing things, where folk have got shoes made of cheese or something. I've no idea how I'm going to use that on a job, but I just think they're funny.
Because what you want is ideas from wherever. It doesn't matter where they come from. The best brainstorms are the ones where you have no idea who actually came up with the core idea.
We brainstorm quite a lot. That's how we generate quite a lot of ideas quickly. And what it's useful for is you can't always have all the team on a job at the same time, but you want their brains on it. So what we try and do is we sit everybody around a table, and you've maybe only got them for an hour or half an hour, and give them a brief what it's going to be, and then everybody just sort of shouts out ideas. The hard thing is trying to capture them all, and you've got 10 brains all kind of chucking lots of ideas at you. You try to sort of scribble them down or have folk kind of draw them up. Folk do it instinctively, so you're not overthinking the problem, you're just doing the first thing that pops in your head, and quite often the first thing that pops in your head is the strongest concept.
We like winning awards because it's getting recognition for the work and for the ideas, and that gives us some measure of whether we're doing things okay or not. Our life is not based around awards, but it's nice to get them when we can.
The placement programme, we've got 3 creative teams, and each creative team will have a placement at any given time.
They get involved in everything, and they always show, we get the placements to present their work.
We try to be very friendly to placements, and we don't make them feel like the placement. On the other hand, if someone's going to be making the tea, it's going to be the placement. And that's not because, that's not through thinking that the placements are junior. That's because if they're not going to be the one, say, running errands, then who's it going to be? It's not going to be the creative director, because the creative director is costing money for the client and the placement doesn't cost money. So it's a practical thing.
Our guy at the moment, Ajit, he brought in beautiful chocolate brownies. So he gave us chocolate brownies and then he showed us work, which I thought was a very smart thing to do. Because his tea's all right, but his brownies were amazing. We do loads of work for Deloitte, who are one of the world's big 4 professional services firms, and they do auditing and tax consultancy and things like that, and you would never imagine that a client like that would offer up interesting projects. It's been 3.5, 4 years now, and there's been numerous times where we've ended up doing really interesting stuff for them. And it's just one example, which was a screensaver. The positioning that we created for Deloitte was always one step ahead, so everything we had to think about pushing one step further than you typically do. And we were thinking about screensavers, and to be honest, screensavers are all crap. And what they generally do is, screensavers would typically have a clock on them, or they'd have the corporate values, and you'd do something pretty dull. And the thing about this is, this screensaver, all the time it's running, it's not saving screens, because screens don't need saving anymore. These screens are CRT screens, they're new screens. They're just using energy, and we thought, Deloitte, being so huge, 160, 170,000 people, what could you do with 170,000 people which was more interesting and more important than just having a clock on their screen? And we thought maybe if you turned all of those screens off, all those little bits of energy you could save then start to add up. And if you start to times a little bit of energy by 175,000 times, you end up with some huge savings. 1 year later, we get these figures to actually say that we are in fact able to light Greater London, the whole of Greater London, for 12 seconds with what they've saved just by making their screens go black, which is a huge achievement from something which seemed like such a small but a perfectly formed idea.
Friday afternoon, 5:30, we have a company meeting. In effect, we turn the place into a bit of a pub, hence the pub sign outside the front.
It's free beer, that's the main thing, it's free beer. And the point of it is that because you're a big company, you can go a whole week without seeing anybody on another floor just because you're busy.
Part of it is the building is tall and thin, so you can actually survive a week without actually going to the floors if you're not careful.
Every Friday somebody has to learn a new skill. So somebody picks a name out of a jar at random, and then a skill out of a jar at random, and then they got a week to learn that skill.
I had to rap the lyrics of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, where I had to dress in my b-ball gear, and where I had like paper high tops that I had made and stuff.
And it's really embarrassing, and that's the point. The other point is that everybody has to do it, so there's no suddenly being ill or going on holiday. You have to do it.
I think the weirdest thing was probably laminating some bacon. We had like a sort of thing that you love, and then you had to laminate it, and then if we had a thing that you hate and you had to shred it. So somebody tried to laminate bacon and somebody tried to shred bacon, and then we had to buy 2 new machines.
But a good laugh at the same time. It's like when you get, if you have a fancy dress party, at first everyone's really embarrassed, and then an hour in, once everyone's had a free beer, it's brilliant.
We have an open mind to any format, as long as the idea is the thing that gets expressed, and that's we will keep doing that. So the world has changed, we've changed, but I think fundamentally we're still doing exactly the same thing that we did 25 or whatever it was years ago.
I made a pizza using ingredients that you could get from a 24-hour garage. Instead of slices of mozzarella, I had Dairy Lee triangles, still in the foil. Fresh tomatoes, ketchup. It's really nice. And then instead of pepperoni, I had a string of sausages. And the nice thing about a string of sausages is you can put them all around the outside and you can roll the crust, so you get stuffed crust.